first book, when I started, when I was young, I was in Miami, believe it or not, working. Um, I was modeling at the time, doing, some common things, trying to make Lakshmi. But I was doing seva in the Miami ISKCON Temple in Coconut Grove every day. And I used to love to sweep the floors. Because when the deities were closed, nobody's around. So it was private. And they had a library there. And it was very disorganized. So I went up and I was looking, they had a big stack of BTGs on the ground, and I was putting them on the table, and I was kind of placing them. And this one BTG was there and on the top, and it kind of fell open. And there was an article about this Indradumna Swami traveling to Ahobalam in 1980 or 79. So I looked at it and I said, oh, you mean, so Narsimadev appeared here on earth? Wow, in a place called Ahobalam, and there's 9 temples. And I was blown away because I had no, growing up in ISKCON, I thought we were kind of more the authorities on Narcima, and it was only Ugra Narshima, the famous painting Jadharani did where he's tearing the intestines, and Prahlad is there. So I thought that was about it, and maybe Lakshmi Narshima. And when I read this article, I became so overwhelmed, and I just told my parents I have to go to India immediately. I wasn't interested in school. I wasn't kind of the typical American boy where, you go to high school, then college, you kind of listen to your parents. My parents, because they were devotees, I had that option of saying I would like to go to India. So before that all happened, I worked a bit more, and I ended up getting in India and going to Ahobalam. And that first trip was it was so incredible. But what made me really confused was I didn't realize how there's so many temples of Narayan, Shiva, Ganesh, Hanuman, so many of the demigods, so many of, obviously Balaji, Ranganathan, all over India. There's tens and thousands, if not millions. And from my understanding, studying the scriptures, Narcima is the root foundation of all the Sanatan Dharma, the Vedic culture. He holds together the power that allows us to keep going forward in our faith, our Krishna consciousness. Whether it's in the Madhva tradition, the Ramanuja, the Gaudiya Vaishnava, which are all connected, I was like, how is it that Ahobalam is it? There's 9 temples here, and there's no. So when I was in Ahobalam, I was asking all the swamis that I'd met, how is it there's no other temples? Like, is there other temples in Andhra? So they told me of a few. There's one place called Yadgiri Gutta. There's another place called Simhachalam, where he's half Varaha, half Narcima. Then there's a place called Mangalagiri, where he drinks the Panaka. So I heard of a few, and they said, but that's it. In Andhra, Narsima's only in Andhra, and there's these few other temples. So I took that information from the priests, and at that time they didn't speak such good English, but my one friend who was with me did, and I wrote it down in Telugu, and I had it in English, and I had a photo of Narshima. So I just went off by myself on the local buses. At that time, I wasn't so experienced. I said, okay, I'll just hop on this local bus that takes 15 hours to get to Hyderabad from Ahobalam, which nowadays only hardly takes 6 hours, So I was very possessed and fanatic to try to see what else was out there. And on my way to Yadgiri Gutta, I was taken off onto another path because someone on the bus was trying to speak to me in Telugu, which obviously I didn't speak. I mean, my Sanskrit is okay. My Hindi was pretty decent. But in the south, a lot of the traditional states, especially Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, they really hold their language sacred. And even though they will speak Hindi, they will stick to their traditional tongue. So I didn't know what to, I was trying to talk to the people on the bus, and all I could do is show them a photo of Narcima and say, Narcima, I would say Devastanam, or, Mandir. I would try to say anything, and they would be speaking to me, and then next thing you know, someone would speak, and then the bus driver would get involved, and then they would stop the bus, and they would always, the bus driver would do the same thing. He would say, Narcima, and then he would just point to a temple in the distance on a hill or a road in a small village. And I had no luggage. It was just my little, I was wearing at the time like a little veshti, and I had a chadar, nothing, and my camera. So I would just hop off, whether in the middle of the night or in the daytime, I didn't care. And I would make my way to this temple. And within the first, back then there was no cell phones. This was in the mid-90s. So I didn't have email, computer. I couldn't keep in touch with my family. I was gone. I told my parents I would be gone for, 3-4 weeks, but I ended up disappearing in Andhra for about, 2+ months. And I found maybe almost 200 temples in Andhra. And what struck me was, in Andhra, they're very special people because of the way they worship Narshima. They don't need a form. They don't need an idol or any iconography aspect of Narshima. He will appear to them on a wall, on a cave, where it's just almost like they say Swayambhuv. So I understood from being in Gurukul, Swayambhuv means self-manifest. The Lord comes to his devotee, and if the Lord wants to come in this plant, and the Lord says, I am here, worship me, you cannot refute this. So the Andhra devotees of Narshima were so convinced. I'd never seen such this love for Narcima. Like I thought I had this attraction to him, but every temple I went and all the people I met along the way in Andhra really overwhelmed me with their love for Narcima, and then for each other. It was like this this cult of Narcima, this worship. So I was finding temples in these caves on the top of mountains where it was just eyes and a big mouth with teeth. And I was so intrigued but confused, because I'm thinking, well, we worship beautiful deities of Radha and Krishna and Narshima and Mahaprabhu, but this is something, wow, it's so far out, like, because you have to have this faith to believe here is Narcima on this wall. And then many, many other forms, and it was an incredible journey. And at the end of my 2.5 months, maybe, I decided I made it towards the border of Tamil Nadu. So at one of my last temples, in Penchukonda, they told me, well, there's no temples in Tamil Nadu of Narcima. And the people in Andhra, they said, Narcima belongs to Andhra. He's only manifest in Andhra and Ahobilam, and he is our God. It was very beautiful, right? Like, it was such a endearing thing for them to say he is ours. So they said in Andhra there's few temples, 10, 15, and I already found like 200. And I just stayed silent because it was such a love that I was appreciating this love, because I thought I had this understanding, but I realized I knew nothing about this kind of addiction or serious bhakti towards Narshima that these people had in Andhra. So I moved on to Tamil Nadu after being told it's impossible. There's no temples in Tamil Nadu. And I ended up in Chennai, at in the city, the heart, and I was thinking, well, I have to go. I need to find people that speak English. So obviously, if I go to the main city, Chennai, people will speak English. So let me ask around. So I saw like a juice shop, fresh in South. They have this black grape juice shops and pineapple juice. It was amazing. And I was like, oh, something fresh, something. Let me get some juice. So I went to this juice shop on the side of the road in Chennai, and there was these kind of like Western Indian youth. They were young. I mean, I was young at the time. They weren't, they're a little younger than me, like young teenage boys and girls, and doing their thing. And I was sitting there having a juice with, my chadar and my small little dhoti and my wooden shoes. And they came over to talk to me, and they said, oh, hi, where are you from? And I was like so happy because they spoke perfect English. I said, oh, I'm from America. Where are you guys from? They said, well, we're from Chennai. I said, can you help me? It was two sisters. They came over. I said, I'm looking for anyone that knows about Narcima, the god Narcima, and where his temples are in Tamil Nadu. I said, is there any way you guys can like help me out? Maybe your dad knows, or your mom, or your aunties. And they started laughing at me, like, and I was like, I waited for a minute, and then they said, you just come with us. I think we can help you. You need to meet somebody. I love that about India, because everybody's very, the amount of houses I stayed in, everywhere I went, everybody invited me. They fed me, they let me wash my clothes. It was just so open and easy, complete trust, and it was very beautiful. So I said, sure. So they pulled up in these very fancy, cars with security, and they put me in, and we went to this big house in Chennai. And I got out of the car, and I started walking to this big mansion, and I hear this bell ringing. And then the girls stopped, and I said, oh, are you coming? They said, just follow the sound of the bell. You'll find everything you need. It was very, now that I look at it, because I'm much older, I was thinking, anything could have happened, but I was so only on a one-track mind, Narcima mind, that nothing else fazed me. So I walked into this house, and immediately before my eyes, there's a huge altar with hundreds of Narcima deities, every size, small, tiny, big, gold, silver, bronze, wood. And there was this little tiny lady sitting in front, ringing a bell, offering a lamp, like this big, to all of her deities. And she was murmuring some mantras. And then she stopped the lamp, and she turned around and she said, oh, wow. Please come sit, have darshan. And I came and sat right next to her, and I was very shocked, because obviously these deities, there was so much gold and silver, and I'd never seen such opulent worship in my life. I mean, I've been to Balaji so many times, Ranganath, but this was something else. And she would kept calling me her son. So she said, my son, how can I help you? I said, well, I love Narcima, and I want to find Narcima in Tamil Nadu. Do you know any temples? She said, yes. Why don't you rest? We'll have nice dinner, and in the morning we'll go. There are some temples I know, and I'll take you to some temples. So I was in heaven, because not only seeing this amazing darshan, but then having an incredible, meeting this incredible soul. Her name was Yadgiri Padmanabhan. I'll never forget her. She left this place, this world, but she was just so kind and so far out. And she told me I would have to sleep in front of Narcima. She had big curtains, so she would shut them. She said, "You sleep there, my son. I'll put one mat, and you will feel his energy." So I was very like, again, shocked by her conviction and her love for Narcima. So I joined them for dinner, and we had a nice talk about her history and how Narcima blessed her and her family and husband, who was no more. And I went to sleep and woke up early, and she immediately, we had a big entourage going to a temple. And I don't know if anybody in the chat is from Tamil Nadu, but there's one of my favorite temples called Sholingar Narcima. Sholingar Narcima is on top of a big mountain outside of Chennai. Huge mountain. And this temple is mentioned in the Puranas, and everybody has been there, from all the Saptarishis to you name it. Everybody has been there. All the saintly yogis, everybody. So I had no idea of this place. And that was the first place we went. And back then they were a little bit heavy with Westerners. They didn't want kind of Westerners around, and there's a little hierarchy with this caste system stuff. But because I was with her, we had no troubles, and I was able to go right next to Sholingar Narcima, Yoga Narcima, and was just blown away by his presence. Because in all my years of seeing 1,000+ temples, I had to come to terms that Krishna says, himself, he can come and go in an idol. His energy can come and also go, depending on his worship, depending on the level of devotion. The Lord, nothing can really hold him except our love and bhakti. Not even the big rituals, because we might do the mantras, all this stuff far out, but if there's no bhakti, or there's no real purity on some level, he'll come, maybe he'll not. So I learned this much later on. So, but this temple in Sholingar, my God, Yoga Narcima, like it was like I felt like I was sitting next to my father. Like, you have to be careful because he's there. So she was so beautiful, but she herself only took me to about 5 temples in Chennai, and or outside of Chennai, Singapuramakoil, so many of these. One in the Parthasarthi temple, and after we were done, we spent 3-4 days together. She blessed me on my way, and she said there's no more, but I spent a month in Tamil Nadu. I found another like 50 temples, and Tamil Nadu is very special because the temples were so grand and massive and powerful. I think there was the Chola dynasty. They were big Narcima worshippers, as well as obviously Narayan and stuff like that. So they built these temples that were so grand, and which was very different from Andhra. So spending time there and having such help in Tamil Nadu, as I was leaving, the Brahmins were telling me in Srirangam, I hung out in Srirangam quite a bit because there's one of my favorite temples where Caitanya Mahaprabhu spent a lot of time there, this Lakshmi Narsimha temple. So they told me, I said, is there any temples in Kerala or Karnataka of Narsimha? So these Brahmins, they said, no, Narsimha's only in Tamil Nadu. You cannot find him anywhere else. He's not in any other state. So I was very confused because they were so convinced of this. And I said, what about Ahobilam? Yeah, okay, Ahobilam is there, but after Ahobilam, he only came here to Tamil Nadu. Never said. Oh, it was hilarious. So I'd already seen almost, 300 temples in Andhra and Tamil Nadu, and I was just laughing at their ownership. Like when you have a child, we say, my child. This is, my house. This is my property, my wife, my husband. It was the same type of love. Narcima, he's ours, you know. Andhra cannot have him. Karnataka. So it was very beautiful. And as I made my way to Karnataka, the same thing happened. When I would go on buses, or if I would, sometimes I would get free rides. I would be walking on the highways by myself because the buses would take for, and I would do in America, I would just hold my hands out, and random Indian families or truck drivers, they would pick me up, and I would say I need to go to Bangalore or to Tanjore or wherever I had some information, and then they would drop me. They were very kind. And Karnataka is probably one of my favorite, I would say, favorite places in India because of a lot of the traditional old culture in all aspects remains. The Gaud Saraswats were there, obviously the Madhvas, and the rituals and the wealth of how the grihastas give so much wealth to the temples. So the rituals were phenomenal, the mantras, the pujas, the yagyas. So I was very blown away. Whereas in Tamil Nadu, a lot of the big temples, I learned later on, were taken over by the government. So a lot of the Brahmins didn't have as much wealth to put into the seva to make it so grand. So when I went to Karnataka, temples were smaller, but it was just this, it blew me away, the wealth of Narshima worship. And that was also the Hoysala dynasty. They were very, very wealthy kings, and their principal deity was Narcima. And, you know, going to Bangalore, I met, and everywhere I would go, I would meet some ISKCON devotees, obviously, because we're very prevalent in India. And in and around Chennai, I was spending a lot of time with Banu Swami. I was spending a lot of time with, what's his name? I would run into Radhanath Swami back in the day. I would run into Kavi Chandra Swami in the most random places. Even one time I ran into Jayapataka Swami in the middle of nowhere in Andhra, northern Andhra Pradesh. I met some devotee on a bus, and he was like, "Prabhu, where are you going?" His Holiness Jayapataka Swami. And I've known Jayapataka Swami my whole life. He's good friends with my father. So I said, "Oh, where is he?" He's like, "I'm getting here, and we just walk hardly 5 minutes, and the center is there, preaching center is there. He's there." So on my journey, I spent a lot of time with the Swamis when they were traveling. Our ISKCON Swamis throughout India preaching. It was really nice. Bhakti Vikas Swami, spent a lot of time with him. Another Swami called Nrsinga Swami, Jagat Guru Swami. And then also on my travels, I would meet these big Indian Swamis in Tirupati, in Srirangam, and also this one Swami, Sai Baba, who at the time, I don't, for me, I wasn't political. I don't read newspapers. I don't do any of that. So for me, everybody was a potential, had potential ability to help me find Narshima. Their problems or their whatever, it wasn't my problem because I never saw that or dealt with that. My only dealing with them was, it's so nice to meet you, Mara. Hey, can you help me find Narshima? Do any of your disciples, or does anybody know somebody that knows? So it was very much like this. So when I was when I was going from Andhra to Karnataka, I passed through this Portapati, and believe it or not, even though most of us ISKCON devotees, we don't like Sai Baba because obviously he has his own philosophical things, deviations, but at that time I had no clue because it wasn't of my, I was ISKCON, Prabhupada, Narcima going forward, So I go through this town and there's millions of people, white people, and I'm like, wow, this is the first time I saw white people in India for so long, and I'm like, who the heck are all these people? And they're like, oh, you got to meet the Swami. I was like, who? Who's this Swami? Sai Baba, you got to meet him. He's amazing. And I saw a photo of him, and a short guy with a big fro. I was like, it didn't make sense to me, but I didn't care. Because I was like, wow, this guy has followers, he has influence, and he has money. He'll definitely be able to help me with Narshima. So they brought me into there was a big hall, women on the right, men on the left, kind of, like ISKCON. And there's this, when I went in the hall, everybody was bowing and sitting, but I didn't bow because I was young. When we're young, we're arrogant, we're passionate. And I saw him and I didn't feel that he was, I don't know, I felt it would be an offense to bow to him. So I didn't. I just kind of folded my hands. And so he saw me from very far. I was in the back. So he had his men come and get me and brought me to him in his chambers, his private chambers. And he was very kind, very sweet man. He was very small and I'm very tall. So I remember he was just very kind. He was looking at me and he said, what are you doing here? What is your purpose? He asked me. That was his thing. What is your purpose here? I said, well, I need your help. Maharaj, I called him. I need your help. They were all calling him Narayan, Guru, all this crazy stuff. I just called him Maharaj and I said, I've been looking for Narshima all through Andhra. And he said, did you go to Ahobilam? He like this. He was like, did you go to Ahobilam? I said, of course. He said, oh, very special place. And he said, did you go to Yadgiri Gutta? I was shocked. He was very into Narshima. And he said, he is number one. Narshima is number one. Everyone I met would always say this to me, the big swamis. And he said, well, what can I do? How can I help you? I said, well, I don't speak the languages. So do you have any people that speak fabulous English, that maybe speak Telugu, Kannada, Tamil? Can you help me out? And do you know any other temples? And so he started telling me a few temples in Karnataka that he visited, obviously, when he was much younger, before he became some big, famous, rich guru. And he was telling me a few. And I was kind of, shocked at his almost fear, but love of Narshima he had. And because of that, he helped me. So he gave me men to translate. He gave me facility, obviously. Anytime I came through there on my way to temples, I could stay for free food. He gave me cars, which I never had. Because where he is, Puttaparthi, there's a lot of Narshima temples around the area. So I spent a few weeks in that area, and every 3-4 days he would send for me, and I would go meet him, and he would ask, so tell me which temple, anything new temples. And of course I was finding new temples every day in the area. Karnataka is one of my favorites. So I would come back and give him a report. And back then I had a 35 millimeter. There was no digital cameras, all this tech stuff we have now. So I couldn't show him the photos, obviously. And he was so excited, like a little boy for Christmas. Like, what do you have for me? So like this, he helped me for many years, actually. He helped for the facility. So, and then through Karnataka, obviously, ISKCON Bangalore helped me. Both sides, the Ritvik, non-Ritvik, they were fantastic help. Then all through, the temples in Karnataka, that's why my first book, Narcima, The Lost Temples, I focused a lot of my attention in Karnataka because a lot of the temples are lost and hidden in the jungles, especially in the Western Ghats up in the mountains. And just the beauty, the iconography, the rituals, it's stunning. So I really wanted to show this through the book, the beauty of Narshima and his power. So going through Karnataka, I found maybe At that time, I think I only found 40 something temples. And it was getting time to where I would have to go back to America, obviously make more money. So I just wanted one last time, one last trip. I had about a week. So what will I do? So I was in a place, I was in Udupi, and I'm sure everybody knows Udupi, one of my favorite places in the world. Udupi Krishna, he's just amazing. And the Balaram Didi there too. And all those 9 mutts that Madhva Acharya established. Madhva was a crazy Narshima Bhakta. So when Madhva died, left this place, when Madhva passed away, can everybody hear me? When Madhva passed away, he left 9 Narsimha deities to his 9 principal, the ones he left as, acharyas or swamis like this. So they are not allowed to approach or worship Udupi Krishna without this Narsimha, who they place at the feet of Udupi Krishna, and they do the worship to their, obviously, Guruji Narshima, and then they can approach Udupi Krishna. This is the way we go. Same like with us. We have Guranga Narshima Krishna, because Narshima removes the obstacles, and then Caitanya Mahaprabhu makes it Narshima more kind of peaceful because of that Vaikuntha Bhav worship. So I was in Udupi for a while, and even I was meeting with Pejwar Swami, the big swamis of the mutts, and back then they were much more approachable. All these big acharyas were there from all over India having, at that time there was big debates, the Ramanujas, the Madhvas, then the Shivites, the Varakalais, Tanakalais, they were fighting. Who's the god? Krishna, Narayan, Shiva. There was at that time I didn't realize it was such a big thing going on in South. So I came at a good time. So I was meeting with the Shivites in Udupi Krishna. There's very special Shiva temples around. So I was meeting with the Madhvas, Ramanujas, all in one place. So it was like, for me, the wealth of knowledge with these people from their acharyas and their parents, it was incredible. So I just was talking to anybody I could talk to, sitting down, anybody I could get a translator. It was incredible. So the Karnataka Swamis, the Udupi, even Pejwar Swami, I said, so, what do you think of Kerala? There has to be some temples in Kerala. I heard that Kerala was very Christian based nowadays, but what's happening? Any temples there? And they were so funny, these Karnataka, oh no, Kerala is useless. These people, everybody's Christian now, they were going on. No temples in Kerala. And few in Andhra, few in Tamil Nadu, but the principal place of Narshima worship is Karnataka. He's definitely belongs, and he manifests from Karnataka only. It's like, it was pretty hilarious hearing these people. So I said, but what about, some big temples in Andhra? They say he manifests, and he went to, Mangalagiri, Simachalam is there. So Sholingar, yes. They said, yes, yeah, but, this is hardly important. Most of came to Karnataka. They could never defeat my argument, but their love and their bhakti for Narshima would always supersede the logic and reasoning, which was very humbling for me to see this, because being a Westerner, we always want to feel, touch, see, we always want to be right. But, when you're working on a level of bhakti, which comes from traditions, which comes from lineages, it's just something else. It's very pure and it's very innocent. So when Pejwar and these other Swamis were telling me Narshima belongs to Karnataka, I couldn't disagree, because the temples I'd seen there, a lot of them are mentioned in the Puranas, and I've read all the Puranas many, many times, and Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman visited, Krishna visited, Rukmini, they're saying, Mahaprabhu, so many exalted souls. So how can I fight with these amazing Narcima Bhaktas? So I left beautiful Karnataka and I headed towards Kerala. And I came to, Cochin. And, there's a lot of Christian churches down there. And wherever I am, wherever village, even if I travel in the West, I like to visit churches, temples, whatever, because there's a lot of, you feel the history and then you feel the prayers. Some of these temples go back thousands of years. Imagine how many prayers have been said there, how many obeisances, dandavats, and heartfelt. And you feel that in the stone. You feel that in your body as you're walking. Sometimes you feel impure walking on these stones, going into the temples because of all the pure people that have been there. So I get to this beautiful church, which confused me because I had heard there was, in Chennai, there's a lot of Christian stuff as well, but I didn't have much time there. I was really focusing on Narcima. But in Kerala, everybody's still wearing saris. They have big bindis. And the churches, a lot of them, they have a gopuram. They're a traditional Hindu temple, but on the gopuram is a big cross. And it confused the hell out of me because I learned a little about, traditional Indian iconography and Vastu and temple architecture. And it was such a mind-boggling experience, coming from this traditional temples in Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka to Kerala, the same idea, but then there's a big cross lit up at night, red cross with Garuda and Hanuman, with the Dwarparas, Jai Vijay when you walk in. So I walked into this beautiful temple church. It was phenomenal, the beauty. And there's Mother Mary. And she's wearing a sari and she has a bindi. and even baby Jesus is there and he has like a bindi with, like sandalwood, or it was just crazy. It blew my mind with South Indian decorations, they have like the gold and I was very confused. But I was appreciating the architecture because I love the beauty of India and the wealth, and the art is amazing. So I was sitting there praying because, she looked like Lakshmi, right? The way she was dressed, she looked like Lakshmi Ma. So I was like, Ma, Lakshmi, or the goddess, the mother. And I was sitting there on my knees in front of her. A father came, an Indian man. He spoke perfect English, British English, He said, oh, my dear boy, where has the Lord brought you from today? He was very far out, old guy. And I said, well, Father, because he was dressed like a father, he had the white and suit. He was very traditional. The only difference is he had a veshti on. So he had a nice suit, and then the bottom was a veshti. It was more confusion for me. And his name was Peter something, but his actual Hindu birth name was Balaji. So we started talking, and I told him, well, I came from, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, and I'm on this path of finding Narcima. And he looked at me and he's like, well, first we have to eat, and then we can get on to this subject matter of Narcima. Will you join me for lunch? He said, I said, well, Father, I only eat, home cooked food, and I'm pure veg, and I don't eat in houses where they eat non-veg. He said, well, I'm still veg, and my wife is veg, so come home. So we go to his house, and had a beautiful lunch, and he says, so how can I help you find Narcima? I said, well, you're from Kerala, obviously. You know There's Guruvaya, there's so many old temples here. So come on, obviously you know something or know somebody that knows somebody. That's how it works in India. Everybody knows somebody that knows somebody. Can you help me find a Narshima temple? And he was he says, you know, you're making me go against my faith. He says, I'm not a Hindu anymore, but I want to help you. But I said, okay, then can you take me? Can you come with me? Because you can translate, you speak Kannada, come on, I need your help. I was very young and very persuasive back then. I used when you're a teenager, you have this ability to manipulate. But most teenagers manipulate for lying to their parents, you know, partying, boyfriend, girlfriend, drinking, smoke, you know, the typical garbage that most teenagers want to do. I was using my manipulate to get Narshima, just anything I could do to convince this guy, lie, cheat, whatever I have to do. He has to take me to a Narshima temple. So he said, you know, my son, yes, I know 5 temples. That's all I know. He wouldn't tell me how he knew them, but he said, I'll take you. Let's go for a couple of days. We'll go stay in my cousin's place but you cannot tell my cousin what we're doing. Because it's going against the church. I said, of course, no problem. He said, but before we go, you have to do me one favor. I said, of course, yes, anything. He said, I'm going to your God to pray in your temple. Please come to the church and pray with me. I said, absolutely, let's go. Because when I grew up a little not so conventional, like my parents, you know, Prabhupada disciples, we Gurukul, all that stuff. But I had a lot of friends that were also non-devotees from playing sports and so on. So if they would stay at my house, they would have to get up for Mangalarti, right? And these are a lot of my friends. They weren't veg, but they would get up, put on a dhoti, tilak, and go to Mangalarti with me. And then if I stayed at their house, if my friends were Jewish, I would have to go to the synagogue. Or if they were Christian, I would have to go to the church. This is how it was. It was like a fair deal. So I was so happy when he said this to me. So we went to the church later on in, like 4:30 for service, and we did a beautiful prayer. And he said to Mother Mary, please protect us on this journey to find Narcima. So we began. And he took me to the first temple where there's a special deity near Guruvayur. And Narcima, there's a body of Narcima. So he has one hands are like this, other hands are like here, and then the other ones are ripping. And then, but the head is a shaligram. So then they call him Swayambhuv Narshima, because shaligrams are Swayambhuv. They're not man-made. They're found. The Lord manifests in them. So the shaligram is non-different from the Lord's body. That's why it's the most difficult to worship, and you get the most offenses. So I was blown away, like, what? And this was a very old temple. So I was really, after seeing so many different forms in Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and all of them were different. You have your different Lakshmi Narshimas, Lakshmi Yoga Narshima, Lakshmi Yogananda Narshima. Then you have Veera Narshima, where he's fighting, right? Then you have Jwala Narshima, where he's so angry at the point when they believe Shiva interfered with the fight, because Shiva was the only one that can get darshan of the Lord. Because he's non-different from the Lord, but he's not the Lord. So he has this ability to sneak in, just like in the Ras Leela, right? He gets away with it. So when Hiranyakashipu was fighting with Narcima, Hiranyakashipu was Shiva's greatest devotee, and Shiva gave him a boon that he could ask one boon of him, and he would fulfill it. So When Hiranyakashipu realized he was about to die, he called upon Lord Shiva to come and protect him. So then Lord Shiva obviously took advantage of this because he would be the first besides Prahlad to have darshan of Narshima. So very amazing story. That's another story in itself. So this priest was extremely knowledgeable about Narshima. And I was thinking, this is such an unusual Christian. Like, he knows so much about the Hindu Dharma and kind of like history and the Vedas, Puranas. He's very knowledgeable. How is it that, what's going on with this guy? But I didn't question because I wanted to get to all 5 temples. So we stayed with his cousin, and then the next day we got up and went to some incredible, unique forms to see more forms. Each one was so different. And there's a form of Narshima called Chintamani Narshima, and how is that possible? So Narshima is sitting and he's holding like a Chintamani flower, which is a ball, and on that ball is millions of flowers. And when you pluck them, another flower grows immediately. So it's unlimited. So it's like he gives you unlimited blessings and of protection. You know, that's his proof. So he gives this, so Chintamani, like, so I was like shocked. And then after we visited those 5 temples, I rode back to him to his town, and we had one more lunch with his wife, and at the end I was thanking him. I had such appreciation because every temple we went, he was very reserved, but I could feel he was like inside of him, he was jumping out of his skin. Like he had to hold back a lot, you know, like almost like a, you know, I guess the only way to explain it is like love. If you fall in love, you have these butterflies. You're so like, you know, my love, the love of my life. And you see him or her and you're like, your heart's beating faster. This is how I felt with how he was feeling. I could feel it on him. Every time we saw one of those 5 forms of Narshima, he was like, I could feel him exploding with happiness inside. But he obviously couldn't say anything because he was Christian. So after lunch, he said, I have to tell you something, Dhruva. I said, what? He said, but this, you know, Narshima, he was always my favorite when I was young. And he said, and he's still my favorite. It was very amazing. Like, he like told me his little secret, even though he's obviously in his doctrine of Christianity and he's very stern with this and committed. His love for Narshima is still there in his heart. So anyways, things went on. I had to leave India with these 400 plus temples under my belt. And every single ISKCON, Hare Krishna Swami, everybody told me that there's hardly any temples of Narshima in India. And I kept it quiet because it was like my drug. So I've been straight edge my whole life. I've never tried any drugs or alcohol, but most people, when they're addicted to these things, in the beginning, they keep it to themselves, unless they're around other people that have this addiction or understanding. So I kept this very close to me, like, woo, I won the lottery. All these temples, you know. It was a very selfish endeavor of me in the beginning, until I went back the second time. So I came back and I worked. My father had this company, and then I modeled. I made a bunch of money, and I was gone again. I was home for 3 months, and my parents were, where were you? And I said, look, I was finding Narshima temples. I got to go. I'm out of here. And I was gone, you know, back to India. And I landed myself in, obviously, Vrindavan. And I met with Ayendra, this Ayendra Prabhu. He passed some time back, but this was in the 90s. So he was, considered a Brijbasi. He knew a lot about Vrindavan because he was there so long. So back then there wasn't that many people in Vrindavan. So I asked him and another Swami called Mahanidhi, hey, is there any Narshima temples in Vrindavan? There's got to be. Krishna manifests here. So then that started a whole new chapter. North India, Rajasthan, Gujarat. And at that time, I was establishing a business in India, import-export business, furniture and home goods, to kind of facilitate my love and life and my addiction for Narshima, because obviously nobody was going to pay for this except me, because nobody understood it. Nobody could relate. Why you want to find just Narshima? What's your problem? It was very, so Ayendra took me to a few temples in Vrindavan, and then in Rajasthan, the queen, her name was Gayatri. I met her, and just by chance, and then we became instant friends. I didn't know who she was. Some old lady lived in a palace. I was very simple back then. There wasn't Instagram or all this stuff where you could just, hey Siri, hey Google, who's this person? So she, in the palace near Govindevji temple, where she can view Govindevji. So I used to stay there with her. Next to the palace is a Narshima temple right in front of Govindevji's temple, but nobody knows. It was her family's private Narshima temple. They would never approach Govindevji unless they went to Narshima first. Same thing with Gopinath, same thing with Radha Govinda. All of them worship Narshima first. And there's a little Narshima temple in a corner, in a nook somewhere. So in Jaipur, that was amazing. And then there was like 20 temples besides those in Jaipur. And then same thing in Udaipur, the kings, and Jodhpur, and then I went all through Gujarat, so many Narshima bhaktas. They say the oldest temple in Ahmedabad is a Narshima temple. And Ahmedabad was established by the people who made the clay pots. Like, when you remember the old days in India, you go and you would get a lassi or a chai. I've never drank chai, but they have it in the clay cup. And then you drink it and you throw it because it's biodegradable. Nowadays it's plastic. So these clay cup merchants, they made their original home in Ahmedabad. That's what Ahmedabad started. And their god was Narcima. They were considered gypsies. So one of the oldest temples in the center, old Ahmedabad, is an Ugra Narshima deity about this big. So phenomenal. And so that started a whole chapter. And then in Dwarka, and it was crazy. And then through Maharashtra, and then even up in Nepal, up in the Himalayas, like going up to Gomukh, Gangotri, Badrinath. The list goes on and on. So each state, each place, I would find Narsimha. Even in Bangladesh, when I went there with Indradumna Swami, and all through Orissa, they're huge. They consider Jagannath non-different from Narsimha. So it just kept going like this. And then in Andhra, I found more. And then I became, I got married, had a kid. So that before you're married and have a kid, you're like driving a Ferrari. And then when you marry and have a kid, then you're like driving an ambassador. You slow down quite a bit. So I slowed down, but along my journey, everybody from Sai Baba to all the ISKCON Swamis, even this one Swami called Kripalu, he helped me. They all asked me, what are you doing? What are you going to do with all these temples? You've seen so many temples. And I was documenting them. I would write the, people's name, the address, the history, whatever I could get, the Stala Purana, which I tell you, I kid you not, each temple said Narsimha came here after he killed Hiranyakashipu. And there was a small pukur or kund, and he washed his fingers there. It was very confusing because a lot of the history was lost. The Mughals invaded, the Portuguese, the Christians. So a lot of the original history was lost. So I had to go find the academics or the the old guys of the village, so the seniors. And then I would spend time with them and say, hey, what is the history of this temple? And then I would find out, oh, okay, a king built this for his daughter who died, or his mother, or a family of kings built this, or a very wealthy grihasta built this. Then I started getting the actual facts and history, rather than the kind of this ethereal, spiritual, overwhelming, everything is amazing and Bhagawan is, I had to start to be more practical when I started doing my thesis and actual research on Narshima. So one of the people that kind of towards the end pushed me, this Narayan Maharaj, he died. I didn't spend that much time with him, but the time I spent with him, we talked a lot about Narshima, and he kind of, because he was used to dealing with Westerners, he knew how to converse with them. So he asked me, he used to call me Dhruv, and he was like, Dhruv, so am I to take your cataloging this, you're going to make some sort of a book, like a travel guide or something? And then I was like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. Because I was like, no, it's for me. No, it's all for me. No, this is for I like him. He's mine. I want more, but then I started to think, wow, okay, how can I bring this to people who obviously don't have the luxury of going to these places? How can I share this with everybody? So then obviously Narayan Maharaj died, and then my businesses and marriage carried on, and life. And after seeing 1,000+ temples, I was still very confused. How can I bring, I don't want to digitize it, because it takes away from the actual process and the kind of the blood, sweat, and tears of all those years of, I would sleep outside in the jungle. One of the times I got trapped in a hobalam in the rain, and there's a cave next to this temple called Pavan and Narshima. So the local municipality, they started rebuilding the temples, and I was used to all the temples being open. I would go and I would hug Narshima. So I would go to these temples and I would just embrace him and fall asleep at his feet and sleep there at night. But this time I was locked out, so I had to sleep in this cave. There was a tiger. It was it seems like a different life for me, but I was crazy. I would sleep on buses. The bus driver would wake me up in the morning and say, oh, you're here, Narcima, and then I would buy like a 2-liter Bisleri water bottle, and I would just have my nothing, rope and small languti, and I would just bathe myself, and by the time I walked to the temple, I'd be dry because it'd be so hot. And then I would always find a river, the Krishna River, the Godavari, this. It was just a really wild adventure, and I'd never expected to be married or have children. That was like a side swipe, maybe, I don't know, Narshima humbling me or something. But towards the end, when I finally figured, what am I going to do? I realized all the photographs I took were bad, so I have to go back. And I found my good friend Damodar. He's a Russian devotee. He's an amazing man, a brilliant photographer, and he's also adventurous like me and a little bit crazy. A little strong-willed and austere, because I wouldn't eat for days. I didn't care about sleep. I didn't care about anything. I just cared about Narshima. So I told Damodar, I said, I got to go finish this book, Damo. I'm never going to do it. I'm getting old. How am I going to do this? So he said, I'll come, and Narshima arranged a couple of things. My wife told me, she only gave me, I think, 3 months or something. Or I pushed 4 months. I can't remember. I always used to tell her, look, You know, a lot of men and women are addicted to a lot of bad things. I'm addicted to one, Narcima. So I have some leeway. Okay, I can do what I want in India and go find him without you having to worry. So she was very open with this, and so Damodar and I went, and we had 4 months, and within those 4 months, we really concentrated on Karnataka, Maharashtra, and a little bit of Andhra. And we saw about 200 temples in those 4 months, but I was still confused. I had the best photos and videos in the world, and the adventures him and I went on were insane because I was driving. I had an old 1980 Tata Sumo. And if any of you older guys know, that's a horrible car. Tata Sumos would flip. They're the worst. They're garbage, especially the old ones. But I was crazy, and I knew, because I learned how to drive in India when I was really young. So I know how to drive. Like, you just go. And even if it looks like you're going to die, everybody stops. And then you just keep going, and you can't hold back. You have to be fearless. Now, my photographer, Damodar, he never experienced that. So I'm driving. I think I drove 30-something thousand kilometers in 4 months. And we're going into the jungles, up the mountains, and the truck is sliding off the cliff, and Damodar's screaming, "We're gonna die, Narshima Dev." It was crazy. So in those 4 months, he aged like 15 years, and his wife, she'll never let him travel with me ever again. But we had the best photos and adventures imaginable. Even now, I saw Damodar like a week ago, and every time I come around him, his wife, she's right there. She will never let him and I be alone, because I'm always like, look, we have to go, because I'm working on the second book now, Narcima, the God of Yoga, and we don't need much time, maybe 1 month in India, but she knows this, so she has to be there to make sure he doesn't commit, because she's scared of losing him, because many times, obviously, I never think of, when I'm there, I don't think of dying, because I'm thinking, why? This doesn't make sense. Why is Narcima going to kill me if I'm obsessed and searching him? I had this very determination. And when I was younger, reading the stories of our acharyas, how they would beg, "Lord, take me before I become overwhelmed by my senses, before I want to enjoy with a woman or a man and family and get entangled. Take me now while I'm young and strong." So I had this conviction when I was young and pure, but he didn't take me then. So I said, okay, well, you didn't take me then, so you can't take me now when I'm finishing this project for all your devotees, your people. So but Damodar didn't have this addiction like I did. So I pushed him a little too far sometimes, but it was amazing. And because of his incredible loyalty and friendship, we did something that I don't think can ever be replicated again. And out of all those temples in Andhra, in Karnataka, and Maharashtra, most of those temples you cannot take photos. And I've known these pujaris for 20 plus years. I know their great grandparents. They knew me when I was very young, coming to these temples. So, but you're not allowed to take photos. But for some reason, when I got to India, I met a friend who was a big newspaper guy in the Hindu, the Times of India, I don't even remember, so many. And he did a front page article on all the newspapers. And the headline was, white boy goes in search of Narcima. And then they had this whole interview on the front page. I had more space than Modi, And then they did all these, all the stations and all the big TV, they came and interviewed me, press release, and they said, well, why are you here? And I said, well, I love India. This is my home. And I need you people, the people of Mother India, to help me find Narcima. So here is my WhatsApp number. So hello? Hello? Hi, I'm still talking. How are you? Sorry, it's just my son. Come. So I'm talking to these devotees. So anyways, I had tens and thousands of, this is my son, Vayu. I had tens and thousands of messages of Narshima Bhakta saying, yeah, we can help you. There's a temple. My cousin, sister's brother's husband has a temple there. He's a pujari. So it was amazing. And to make it quick, because I know everybody has to leave, at the end, I had this stuff and I was thinking, how am I going to make a book? So I designed the book. And if any of you have seen the Lost Temples book, there's only 54 temples there because I can't. Yeah, the Prabhuji's holding it up. Yeah, there it is. Surprisingly, I don't have one because everybody took them all. But you know, it's so nice to see. It's amazing. But this book, I was thinking, what do I do? So I picked 54 really unique temples, and then I was thinking, how am I going to write it? People don't want facts and figures and boring data. Some do, but in our tradition, we want to see the love, the relationship between, love you, the devotees and the devotees of the devotees of the devotees, right? So my editor was like, well, did you keep a diary? And I always keep a diary, a verbal, visual, and a written. And I write it as it happened. If the day was boring, I write the details of that. If it was crazy, I write it exactly how it was. I mean, I had to hold back a lot in the book, but I wrote more the adventures of going to the temple rather than all the facts and figures of, this temple and this age. Some of it I put in there. And it made sense to me because I wanted to bring people with me on the adventure and to show the beauty of these forms of Narshima and how they're worshipped. And even though I've seen 1,000+ temples, which I hope I can finish cataloging and put on a bigger database later, I wanted to signify Narshima's importance in the contemporary world, especially in this next book, Narshima, the God of Yoga. That's focusing on how yoga originated from his manifestation. After he killed Hiranyakashipu, he was very upset. First of all, he was upset that the demigods didn't stand up. Because imagine you're walking by and you see a father beating and torturing his son. What would you do? Most normal people would be like, hey, they would try to jump in and save the child. But Indra, all the demigods, there's Prahlad getting tortured, putting under elephants, Hiranyakashipu's throwing him off mountains, putting him in oil. Nobody's saying anything, not even Narada Muni. Nobody, everybody's scared of Hiranyakashipu, and rightly, because he was the most powerful. And after he killed Hiranyakashipu, the demigods, these people who didn't protect his devotee, or at least try, they wanted to see him. So imagine, he was very upset. Even Lakshmi Ma. So this is the only manifestation where you see Lakshmi in India, or Lakshmi's always here. She's in the star symbol or in the pyramid. Shri always resides on Narayan's heart. No matter what manifestation, no matter who he is, Shri is there. But the only time she isn't there is in that form of Ugra Narshima. There's no Shri. Because he only manifests for one reason, to protect his devotee and to remove Bhakti Vinyasa, to remove his spiritual obstacles, which his obstacle was his own father. So he was so upset that the only way to calm his disappointment, not like our anger, rage, it was more of a spiritual anger. The Lord, with his snap of his fingers, everybody and everything could be destroyed. So he pacified his disappointment by breathing, pranayam, meditation, in lotus position And the first student of that, what we call yoga, was Prahlad. So in India, they say he came here and meditated in Yadgiri Gutta, in Mangalagiri, right? In Simhachalam, he meditated. So many Pendalgan, so many Narshima temples. At each place he came and meditated. Then he bathed, or he stuck his nails in the ground and a kund came. So many different things. And he was never alone. He did this with Prahlad. So if you look, every place I went, I wouldn't just see the Narshima temples, I would see every single temple in the village. I would see the mosques. I would visit everybody. I would talk to the Hindus, the Muslims. So it was like an anthropological study for me, and I love to talk. So what I realized is there's no yoga Krishna, there's no yoga Balaji, there's no yoga Ranganath, there's no yoga, well, Shiva's supposed to be formless, even though they worship him in a form. But we don't worship yoga Shiva, yoga Ganesh, yoga Hanuman. A lot of things have been, how do you say this politely, kind of a little bit concocted lately, some of the ways of worship and the gods and goddesses. But the only god in India that is worshipped as yoga, the god of yoga, is Yoga Narasimha. And there's hundreds. I've seen like almost 400 temples of Yoga Narasimha. So this second book will focus on that, of the importance of how he protects the Varnashram Dharma, so religious principles, right? Whether it's brahmacharya. First of all, children, he protects the children. Brahmacharya, right? Then vanapras, then sannyas. So he protects all the four orders equally. And how important he is to the contemporary world, because he is called the divine protector. You see? And he doesn't give anything else. He doesn't give us anything materially. I'm proof of that. I have nothing. He gives protection. And he will help you on your spiritual path. He'll protect your spirit. He's not necessarily going to protect your material things. If anything, sometimes he'll take them away. But if your material things are helping you on your path of Krishna consciousness, whether that's serving your family, your work, your business, it's all running parallelly equally, it will all be protected. So this next book I'm just so excited about, because it's going to open up a broader audience of preaching Krishna consciousness and the whole yoga scene without any, what do you call it, like hippie, without me having to change or water down or create some new way of preaching, because there is no new way of preaching with Narshima. This is who he is. This is why he came. This is how you can apply his worship into your life to benefit you. So I'm really excited about that. And I mean, I could go on forever. There's crazy adventure. We have limited time, and I wanted to ask anybody if they have any questions or suggestions or comments or anything like that.
Thank you very much, Dhruva Prabhu. You took us to a wonderful journey through all your visits to all these temples, and just to see how you followed your heart, not caring for, where you stay and all that. But let's quickly see if anybody has any question.
Don't be scared.
I'll start. All the temples that all the deities you saw, were there any that were self-manifested ones that you can?
Yeah. There was, well, I'll tell you a funny thing. At first, a lot of the temples would say Swayambhu, self-manifested. And I was knowing Vedic iconography or Hindu iconography, because my brother's a master. He studied in India. I know what Swayambhu means, and I know what a deity that's carved is. So a lot of these temples, they would have a beautiful deity, and he's obviously been hand carved. So you can't, if a deity is hand carved, he's not Swayambhu. the Lord can come into him, right? With the Pran Pratishtha, we do the whole ceremony, but the Lord can leave. So for a long time, I was very confused by the priests. They were saying, Swayambhu, Swayambhu. And then what happened was, as I really started diving into the academic, boring side of things, which I had to, I realized what most of those deities are, like in Vrindavan, this might come to a shock with most people, is a lot of people think that Krishna, Radharaman in Vrindavan is Swayambhu. They think the deity is Swayambhu. But this is a huge misconception. The deity is not Swayambhu. What is Swayambhu is the shaligram behind him, which was placed in his back. And I've been very, very, very close to Radharaman. And with a lot of these deities in South India, you'll see there's a shaligram here. They carve out and they put a chakra shaligram here, or they'll put a shaligram in the heart, or behind him through the heart, they'll put a shaligram inside and they'll carve out and then they'll fill it in. So then that makes the deity now Swayambhu. The shaligram and the stone become one. But for a long time, I was very, I hadn't, so those deities are Swayambhu, but then the real self-manifest ones would be, like I was saying in the beginning, on a cave wall. You'll one particular cave in Andhra, there was a deity, it looked like a deity on the wall. You could see a head, you could see shoulders, and like maybe one arm. So this they called Lakshmi Narsinga Swayambhu, and I was in this cave for several hours, and it was scary because I had to get by a big cobra to get in the cave. This deity was Swayambhu because he was part of the stone. There was no carving, there was no, back then, like I said, I could touch. Many of these temples hadn't been really worshipped for a long time, so I was really getting in there, There's a lot of that in Andhra, but most of the other ones are either a shaligram, where they built a body for him, or a deity where they put the shaligram in. I would say I've only seen maybe 15 to 20 actual Swayambhu, self-manifest stone type deities, where it's like a rock. He appeared on this rock and he left a symbol or a foot or something, which is still very difficult to make out. Like I said, you have to have this Ito Nishimo Parato Nishimo. You see, Lord Nishima is here, Lord Nishima is there. Wherever I go, he is there. He is in my heart and outside as well. So he's formless, but he can also come if he wants to be on the wall or in a plant. There's one place where he manifests in a tree, So it's, that's pretty much all I've seen, about 15 to 20 of them. Swayambhu.
Thank you,
Thank you for asking.
Any other question?
Prabhuji, I have a question. Why you were so much about Narsimha, Prabhuji? Why not other roop of Krishna?
Oh, well, I was always into Krishna, obviously, because I was born into that, but I didn't see a distinction between Krishna and Narcima, because when I was studying a lot, often the gopis would call Krishna Narcima Krishna, or they would say, don't get Krishna angry like Narcima Krishna. Don't make him upset because he will become Ugra. Caitanya Mahaprabhu, obviously I love because he manifested, I think it was 4 times as Narshima. Remember the Kazi, he threw him on the ground and he tore his chest open and the Kazi had the scars. He manifested, I think, 3 to 4 times. Jagannath is he is Narshima. In Puri, they more often refer to him as Narcima than Krishna. So I love that reason for Jagannath. But for me, even Balaji, I see Balaji as non-different from Narshima. I don't know, Narshima, it's the idea that he gives something that all the other avatars don't give, which I said is protection on the platform of serious progress towards whatever we want to call it, Krishna consciousness or our bhakti progression. You see Prahlad, he was tortured, beaten, and that was an extreme case. We don't have to be tortured or beaten to have Narshima's protection. This is not, but since I was a boy, the idea of that God manifest to protect a child, and I was a child, that was and a lot of, if there is kids here or young teenagers listening, they get it, because yeah, it's very relatable. So I just carried that forward in my later years, But for me, I see Krishna, Radhe Shyam, and Vrindavan, or Radha Madhava Mayapur. I see Krishna, I see Narshima. It's just my understanding. I hope that was
okay. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Radha, you have a question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. It was a very interesting talk. I had a question, and the question was that what was your favorite temple of Nrsimhadev?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer, because I would say my favorite temple of Narcima is probably one I'll never put in a book, but it's in a place in Andhra, and he's a huge 8-foot tall deity, and he has 6 arms, and he's Jwala Narshima, and he's in a very thick jungle in a cave. That deity, I would say, is probably at the top of my list because of my experiences I had there with him, and how the feeling of feeling Narshima there. But I felt that at a lot of temples, but that one in particular, because he's so isolated from everything and everyone. You have to walk or at least you used to have to. There's probably more roads there now, but you used to have to walk 8 kilometers into the jungle, and it was real jungle. It wasn't thin. It was very thick, and waterfalls everywhere, and tigers, and it was. And when you get there, and the wall with the little cave you crawl through, and it opens, and then Narshima is there. That stays with me most often in my thoughts when I think of my adventures and my wanting to get back to India. So that would be my favorite, Jwala Narshima, in a place called Mallur in Andhra. Thank you for asking. Andy, you want to ask anything else?
No, Prabhuji, thank you for answering my question. Haribol.
Haribol, Jai Narshima.
Swati, you have a question? Swati Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you. This was very, very inspiring. And, thank you for sharing your story, amazing adventures. I'm really looking forward to reading your book. Prabhuji, can you share some experience where you personally felt protected? I mean, it was, in your words, wild adventure, and I'm sure there were many instances when you found yourself in dangerous situations. And did you actually feel personally protected by Lord Narsimha, or any such experiences you could share with us, Prabhuji?
Yeah, there was. There was definitely, one of them was when I was in South, there was the Muslim-Hindu fighting back in the 90s, or it was maybe 99, 2000. There was a lot of stuff going on. So I was making my way to this one temple in a bus, and the bus came in between the guns, they were shooting, killing each other. And for some reason, I don't know. I was in a situation of like that. Most of the time, the adrenaline kicks in, your body goes into shock and fear, and then most people. But I feel I was just, Narshima really protected me. For some reason, this guy, he grabbed me, and we were sitting at the back of the bus, which had like a door to go out, and he threw me out there and jumped out with me, and dragged me into the, kind of like the jungle under this little bridge thing. And yeah, we were there for quite a few hours, while this craziness was going on. And that was one of the times that I really, because I was so tired and delirious of my traveling that I wasn't thinking so straight. But Narshima, I think that guy, like, why did he grab me? He could have grabbed anybody on the bus. The bus was full. And I know a lot of people got shot on the bus, but he grabbed me and opened the door and pushed me out. So, there's hundreds of crazy things like that, but that I remember because I wasn't so focused. I was exhausted. It was someone else, maybe a great devotee of Narshima who protected me or something, So that was very special to me. I think of that often. But that was in the times when I wanted Narshima to take me. So, thank you for asking me. Hopefully that answers
Thank you,
your question.
Prabhuji. Very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Jai Narshima.
Jai Narcima.
Any other question?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
Hare Krishna Dhruva Prabhu. Very nice talk. Thank you so much. I'm curious to know about when you were in the same cave as the tiger. If he was on loose, and how did you live through it?
Well, that was one of the wild ones. See, there was that time I went, there was a big lightning storm. Now, I took the risk of going by myself, which I always did, and the Brahmins, they would fight with me a lot, but I would love to go sleep at Narshima's feet in Pavana, like Narshima Temple, but this time they were trying to tell me something, and my Telugu is not so good, so I would always ignore them anyways, because they were always trying to, like, I don't know, I thought they were trying to control me or something, so I was like, oh, okay. So they were trying to tell me that the temple's locked and I couldn't sleep there. But when I got there, I saw it was kind of coming dusk, big clouds were coming, and I could see the lightning in the distance, and I was like, oh man, I couldn't break the door. It's a bigger door. And so I saw the cave. It's next to Pavana Narshima, and they say this cave is where Lakshmi, Gaja Lakshmi, did tapas to marry Narshima. So there's a small deity of Lakshmi in there, Gaja Lakshmi, and it's a small cave. It's not that big, maybe 10 foot long by 5-6 foot wide, and it's like literally a cave. So I go in there, and I had a small travel flashlight. I still carry one these days, very thin, but the batteries wear out a lot. And that day I didn't bring my pack. I just brought my, I didn't have my extra batteries. So I had this flashlight. I had a granola bar and a little bottle of water. All of a sudden, the storm came in, and it started, before it started raining, it was dark, pitch black, and I had my flashlight on. And then when the lightning goes so big, you see everything clearly. So it went boom, and the whole sky, I could see the temple down, but then I saw this huge tiger. Now, that was like the third time I saw in the jungle, the tiger, and they're different in a zoo. A tiger in a zoo is not as big as a tiger in the wild. It's something else. It's very, very, it's very scary. And I was like, oh, it happened to me before a couple of times. So I just was like, I turned my flashlight off, and I just was silent. And I started breathing into my chatter, so my breath wouldn't come out to him. But I knew he saw me because he looked right into the cave. The light was on. And then it was pitch black, and then the lightning came again with a huge thunder, and he was gone. And then it started pouring rain, and it wasn't a windy rain. It was the rain that just came straight down, and lots of lightning. So I was up for probably, my flashlight lasted about 2 hours. I didn't carry a watch on me, so I figured, and every flash of lightning, I was looking to see, and I was thinking, okay, Narcima, maybe this is it, perfect. Finally. But, you know, I wasn't so lucky. And I stayed up all night because I figured it was a straight, like almost like a silent rain. And there wasn't very much noise. So I would definitely be able to hear him walking or her walking, the tiger. So I eventually fell asleep. And then I woke up as the sun was rising. And when I before I got out of the cave, I was seeing if he was there or looking around. I clapped my hands really loud. They don't like loud noises, like bears. So I came out of the cave and I looked to the right of the cave. And there was kind of like a little tree, like a thorn bush tree. And under that, I could see it was dry. There was like a long, so obviously the tiger had slept right in front of the cave under that little bush in the rain. And the warmth of his body sleeping there, the ground was dry. So I got out of the cave. I was a bit delirious because I was so tired. And, you know, when your body's, even though I was pretty calm, but still your body is holding that much kind of tension. And one of the pujaris, Badri, was walking down the path to come open the temple. And he was like, Dhruva. I was like, oh, thank God you're here. So it was very funny. Yeah, that time was pretty far out for me. And then we had a really nice darshan. And that was kind of like the last time they let me do abhishek of the deities with them, because I'm white. And a lot of those traditional Brahmins, they still believe white people are Sudras and were like untouchables. So, but these Brahmins in the early days, they would let me just do whatever I wanted. You know, I would just take the abhishek. It was beautiful. So we were worshiping Pavana Narshima, and just it was, yeah, that was unforgettable because that was the last time I could touch Pavana Narshima's feet and massage them, and yeah, that experience. But I don't know how I lived that one, but either the tiger was not hungry, or, you know, they sense fear often, these animals, tigers, lions, cobras, sharks, you know, what is that Chanaka Pandit says? They sense fear. So I just didn't have that. Fear didn't kind of coexist in my life at that time. I was, you know, young. I had no family. I mean, obviously I had parents and brothers and a sister, but you know, fear never I didn't believe in fear. So, and I don't know if that was just my nature or Narshima nothing had happened to me. So I had this fearlessness. So maybe he didn't sense that. And I was very grateful he just slept outside the cave. So that was that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
There are two questions in the chat box. One is, thank you for such an adventurous class. I can sense you went through so much of risk, but you had immense faith and determination. Any practical tips on how I can develop complete faith and determination?
Say that again, the last part?
Yeah. You took so many risks and you had so much faith and determination. Can you give some practical tips on how the person who's asking this question can develop complete faith and determination in spiritual life?
Well, for me, I always, maybe it's because I'm very simple. I always saw that if I got on a plane, I could die. And if I got on in a bus or a train or a taxi, more particularly in India, because it's very dangerous, the chances of me dying were like a lot, you know, 8 out of 10 or something. I knew this. And even in America, we drive fast here, speed. So I always just realized that I at any moment I could die. Even when I go to sleep at night, I could die. So I lived every day and I still, for the most, I mean, obviously I'm a father, so I got to think of my children and put them to bed and all this stuff. But I believe that any moment I can still die, and I try not to have any attachment to all these beautiful material duties, being a husband, being a father, being a son, being a brother, being, I see them all as part of the bigger picture, and that it's the attachment that makes me have fear, and it's the attachment that makes me worry and doubt that I'll be protected, because it makes me feel I'm the protector. I'm protecting my son. Like, I'm not protecting my son. Obviously, for simple things like if he's around a pool, my sister has a pool, so obviously I have to be careful. That's just logic. But in the higher essence of things, I'm not the protector and I'm not the controller. So I guess because we were grilled that since we were young in Gurukul and all this beautiful philosophy we have, I think I just kind of, that's how I grew up. So I realized there's nothing worth fearing about or being in anxiety about. And that not a blade moves without the will of the Lord. And what is, the best, one of the best things that I ever heard, Sai Baba told me one time. He said, and I would never quote Sai Baba, but this was far out. He said, what is good and what is bad is good. There's no difference, because everything comes from Bhagavan's energy. So often we focus on the negatives, we focus on it took me 18 years before I even started to think about doing my book. And I was supposed to finish my book like 15 years ago. But I just was like, and at one point I almost gave up. But I was like, well, okay, someone else will do it. So to live with more faith and to have more faith is to realize that, look around us and see how good we have it, even if it's bad, Look at the positives. Krishna blesses us with so much positive things, even if there is negative, loss of life, family, job, or whatever. It just closes one chapter of our spiritual with material balance evolution, and another one opens, because it's temporary. Everything's temporary. Our job, our family, So if we know that philosophy, then we don't get disturbed, and we should wake up happier every day. Everything's temporary. Our relationship, our love, we wake up sometimes happy. We wake up sometimes feeling we're getting older, so our body's in pain. The husband wakes up miserable, the wife, whatever. But I think if you float through the beautiful Krishna consciousness that we've been blessed with, I don't know, nothing's really negative, and everything should be uplifting, even if it's material, or what we like to say, karma kand, or their karmis. But no, everything is an energy of Krishna or Narcima, Narayan, and it can be used to uplift us and give us strength on our spiritual path, our bhakti. So the main thing is to establish a faithlessness or difficulty, or it's hard to chant our rounds or whatever. Our sadhana weakens. You can't beat yourself up. We're all aiming for the highest. That's the main thing, is we're aiming for the highest. Most people don't. So if you're aiming, you can't be judging yourself on the idiosyncrasies, which we're all going to have, because we all eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Nobody's above it. You have to focus on the positive progression, the daily positive progression. And for some people who are not maybe fully initiated, they're chanting 1-2 rounds, they're reading little, they're listening little. This is a positive progression. Then you get initiated, positive progression. And whatever, you get married, you cohabitate, you're both slowly struggling, children, family, job. It's only positive. Even though it's difficult and there's a lot of material struggle, but that's life. But it should only be an uplifting daily occurrence that motivates you to stay progressively strong in your faith. Even if your faith, you think it's bad, But the main thing is you have faith. A lot of people don't. Why do you think there's so much alcoholism and drug use, even amongst the Hindus in India? I have a lot of very well-off friends in India, because they have no faithlessness, because they're not striving on any level, even if it's a tiny level. It's not the size of the level, it's that you're making daily commitment to be on that Krishna consciousness train, and go forward. So don't focus on the negative. Don't become overwhelmed by negativity, and if things aren't working out for you the way you think they should. And don't judge yourself if you make a human mistake. We all do it. Just stay focused in your sadhana. Eat for Krishna, sleep for Krishna, look after your family and love them beautifully for Krishna. Defend your spiritual community and your family for Krishna. Everything's for Krishna, or Narcima Krishna. So that's what I would humbly suggest. I don't know, that's what keeps me going. It's like so much, we can focus on so much negativity, and trust me, but it ain't worth it. Focus on the good. And a lot of the Indian population, like Prabhupada said, you guys are born with this golden spoon, you don't struggle with that. The material, a lot of the white devotees struggle with a lot of material conditioning. The bloodstream has been infected by it, you see. That's why Prabhupada said often the third generation of the Westerners will start to be able to make spiritual progress, because the bloodline will become pure. A lot of those subtle anarthas that our parents have, 50% of them come into me, and then 50% of mine, which are 50% less. You understand? So it's all progress. So for me, I see my children, they're on a much higher level than me. So I facilitate that blossoming of spiritual evolution for them, and then hopefully their children, and then it'll be pretty far out to see what happens with them. But stay positive, stay happy, and never give up. That's what I would suggest.
Thank you, Prabhu. There are a few questions that have come in. Thank you for your special class on Narsimha Darshan, Prabhuji. Can you please tell us, where is the Ugra Narsimha with 6 hands, 8 feet deity you mentioned in Andhra? Which part of Andhra? Any address or any specifics about where it is?
I said the place is called Malur. It's northeast of Andhra? Is it near? I believe is it in Warangal district or Karamnagar? I think it's North Warangal district. Well, now Andhra's split. You have Andhra and what is it? Telangana. Yeah, it's very confusing for me. I met with the what's his name, the minister, the Lakshmi Narshima, and I was so confused. I kept saying Andhra, and he was like, no, it's Andhra, and I was very confused. But yeah, Malur is there, and there are some people and photos. People have obviously, now everybody has YouTube and cameras in India, so Malur is on YouTube. You can find a couple of videos of his darshan. What's special about him is around him there's a crystal effulgence. So when you take a photo, it looks like it's fire, because his name is Jwala, so he's emanating in flames of fire. So around him, this white quartz crystal, when you flash or you have a big arti deepa, you're offering it, you see these like rainbow fire going every time around him. It's the most mystical thing you've ever seen. So Malur, M-U-L-L-U-R, or Mala. I don't know if they've changed the name, but yeah, M-U-L-L-U-R.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mataji, you have a question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Prabhuji, I have a request. Since you have visited so many temples, please bless all of us to get chance to visit at least one self-manifest temple in India.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. This one temple, Malur, is Swayambhuv. This one, when you touch, I was touching it, his body, his skin goes like this. You can push it in. It's very amazing, yeah. And yeah, go, please do it. I was doing a lot of devotees would meet me in India, come on tours and stuff. So, but obviously this COVID has slowed things down. So. But when I'm there, I always, if devotees are around, they meet me and come on an adventure with me, So I encourage, maybe sometime in the future, one of, your yatra, if you want to do a Narshima pilgrimage tour, we can figure it out with the authorities and stuff, I love doing stuff like that. So thank you.
Question. Have you
One more question.
Go ahead, Mataji.
When are you going to release your next book?
Right now, it was supposed to be the end of the year, but I'm praying that it's before next Narshima Chaturdasi. Right now, I'm just getting pre-orders to help fund the book, and I'm also getting, I'm requesting donors or devotees that want to have their families' names in the book. So I'm raising the last, money, because the first book I had to do myself. I paid for everything, and I had a little bit of help. But the second book I'm pre-selling and also getting devotees, because I was very shy to ask for help. I'm getting devotees who want to sponsor and do all that to come forward to help me finish with the paying for my editors and the last trip to India, the last month I'll need. So hopefully, COVID has tightened people, made them more fearful. Hopefully by a month before next Nrsimha Chaturdasi, the book will be out. That's what I'm praying for, but I'm also being very mellow and peaceful. So whenever he wants.
I want one copy of that.
Okay. You can pre-order, you can speak to Prabhuji.
Yeah. We've already got 5 orders for the Lost Temples, and anybody the ones that's already published or the next upcoming book can reach out to Gopal Govind Prabhu, and he will provide more details.
Oh, that's wonderful.
One question, Prabhu, have you met Prabhupada when you were a kid?
No, I'm the second generation there was the first generation a lot of them weren't born. They came to the movement and they were already like 4 or 5 years old. So I'm like the generation that was born so I just now turned 40. So no, I never met him. But I mean, I feel like I have, but I haven't. I wish I did. But my parents had some good association with him, and because they're they're pretty strict and stalwart. They've lived their life pretty, consistently on their spiritual journey. So I think through them, and they're following the principles really good. I've met Prabhupada, so hopefully I'll meet him sometime. Thanks for asking. Anything or anybody else?
Anybody else? Thank you for staying on with us. It's Ekadashi night. We're supposed to stay awake.
Oh, yeah.
Especially Narshima Ekadashi on Purushottam. So as long as you can stay, we'll keep shooting the questions.
Yeah, I can probably stay 10 more minutes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Very nice, wonderful class and wonderful journey yours is. And is your 2 books covers everything, Prabhuji, whatever you visited, all the temples information?
The second book will have more temples, but it doesn't cover all. I don't know. I think I'm up to like 1,000, almost 200 temples. But no, I'm focusing more on the very unique, off the beaten track temples, and a couple of the second book will focus. I will have a Hobalam in there. There'll also be I'll put Mayapur Narshima, and a friend of mine has a big guru in Germany. He has a big Narshima temple. So I will be putting his temple in there because he has thousands of Westerners worshiping Narshima. So yeah, so I'll include a couple of those. But the second book will mainly focus on the really obscure, unique, like the lost temples of Yoga Narshima. And then after I'm finished with my third book, which is on contemporary and historical Nrsimha devotees, then I'll release probably everything, because it's taking a long time, you know. By then I'll have my son will be grown, so I'll have more time to focus on doing like a small Lonely Planet book of all the temples, mainly just, you know, a photo, the little history, who to contact, how to get there, stuff like that. It'll be mainly like a catalog of Narshima temples. But yeah, the first and second book will have a lot of amazing information about him, but not all the temples.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
My pleasure.
I once had this book sitting on my desk, and my father came in and he just picked up the book and he was going through it. And he found one of the temples when he was growing. He grew up near Udupi in a town called Muki.
Oh, Muki, yeah, I love Muki.
Yeah, so he noticed, I think it was Melkote, if I'm not mistaken. But there was one temple, he said, I've been to this temple when I was a young child. And it brought back his memories looking at this. And it just went back almost 70, 75 years in memory.
Wow.
And he started talking about this temple.
That's amazing. That's so amazing. You know,
I remember,
go ahead.
Sorry, you were saying something, Prabhu?
Well, just Karnataka, you know, it's just the temples and the worship is just something else. The people, you know, they kept the traditions pretty right on. You know, the traditions are still very prominent. The way they dress, the culture is just, it's far out, you know. So it's definitely probably one of my favorite places in India.
Actually, we met in Udupi, Prabhu, in 2015.
I thought you looked familiar.
Abhiram Prabhu was there.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, Abhiram was there with Tattva.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
that's
the Gurukul project on the mountains.
That's right. Yeah. God, Tattva. He was one that helped, you know, Tattva, because I spent a lot of time with his son in Caitanya. And Caitanya and I went to a lot of temples when he was much younger. With his sister Anuradha, she also would come because they spoke the languages, especially around the Udupi and the Western Ghats up there, you know. And that was so fun. I had a lot of adventures with Tattva and his family. And I mean, Abhiram, yeah, go ahead.
There was one temple in the documentary that I've seen there. You go through the caves and there's half water, waist height, and there are bats flying on the top. I remember that. Which one was that?
That was Bidar. Bidar is on the border of Andhra and northern Karnataka, like at the tip of the northern Karnataka where it shoots into Maharashtra. So Bidar, yeah, it's sad what's happened there. I guess the water has some pretty nasty infection, like viruses. So people were actually dying because they weren't keeping the water clean. They were blocking the water because it was a natural spring. It was a perpetual spring. In a perpetual spring, you know, the water comes out and flows out. So they blocked it and it made it stagnant. So my friend was telling me how they're trying to figure out a way, because the temple's been closed for quite a while now. That was one of my favorite temples. I would go there often. It was, that Brahmin was so far out. He was an amazing man. I believe he passed away, but yeah, that deity was something else. And you know, before you used to be able to worship and touch him and rub the sandalwood. It's just, yeah, amazing. So you're bringing back a lot of memories. It's good.
Prabhu, you have any? You were trying to say something? Gopal,
yeah, Hare Krishna. Yeah, I was in. This is a wonderful talk. It seems like as if it keep going on and on and on. Like it's amazing. You just submerge us in the Narsima's pastime. I was just curious to know, Prabhu, that is there any temple which you have information but could not see that, and you plan to do it sometime in future?
Oh yeah, I have maybe probably like 100 or more of those I haven't seen. I have them in my special book of temples that I haven't seen. Or nowadays, because I have so like a lot of following in India, because on Facebook I have this page, the Cult of Narcima. So a lot of friends I met over the years who are also crazy about Narcima, and they themselves share in my passion. A lot of them are wealthy, you know, tech people and stuff, and they live in Bangalore, on Hyderabad or something. So sometimes they'll go out on the weekends and they'll find temples for me, get the history, and then take a couple of snaps if they can. And then hopefully next year and the year after I'll go to those. I'll finish up those, but I'll probably find more by then. So I would say there's more. There's probably another 1,000 or more I haven't even seen. So I'd like to find them, but we'll see.
Amazing.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's really amazing.
The internet. Take a look at the help section in your Alexa app.
You guys will have to forgive me. I have to get my son to sleep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Copies of the lost Gopal Govind Prabhu will speak to you.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys, and I look forward to maybe after COVID settles down, coming up there, we can do a nice Narcima evening or something, when things settle down.